Simon Told Helen wins a half length. Zach Benelli second.
Welcome to Greyhound Gossip.
Peaky Blinders start cheering for Tommy Shelby wins the WA Sprint Championship final.
Featuring Peter O'Neill.
Mozza moves up to Mermaid Manelli. Fab's Gem 3 deep. Here comes Fab's Gem.
Hard Style Rico by 5 lengths to Simon Told Helen. Third Tommy Shelby.
This segment is dedicated to the discussion and promotion of greyhound racing.
Cindy's Oliver, Rockstar Patriot, Paul Stewart, back-to-back with Rockstar Patriot in the Galaxy.
Handsome Prince, a bolder clear. The former Tasmanian Handsome Prince has won the $1 million chase.
Very good morning, everyone. Welcome along to Greyhound Gossip. Big weekend of greyhound racing, not only here in Western Australia, but on the East Coast as well, with the Maturity being run. Follow the band winning for Rebecca Gibbons, and it was a big weekend here as well. We had the racing on Friday night of the shorts, the heats of the shorts. Opening heats, Spooky Hook for Andrew McLaren was successful over Sunset Pepe and Sunset Nightjar. Lip Tricks won for Cody Charles. Big weekend for Cody. All over Carja ran second in that heat. And then we saw Sunset Bubbles for Pete Brown take out the third heat over What a Ripper. So they were the three heats on Friday night of the shorts, and the final comes up with Spider Venom in box number 1, $21. And Spooky Hook is currently in box, or is in box number 2, currently at $6. Sunset Pepe, $5, all over Carja, 5. Sunset Bubbles, 8. Sunset Nightjar, $6 in box 6. Lip Tricks in box 7, $9. What a Ripper is currently the favourite, drawn out in box number 8, $3.60. The second reserve, Sunset Hornet, at $2.25, stifling that market because of the fact that it's the second reserve as at the moment. Then on Saturday night, we had a very good program there with heats of the distance potential, some very good runs as well. And we saw the opening heat go the way of Molfetta Cruz. First up over the distance for Nick Minutillo and led by Fairway. Got tight over the concluding stages, but was very, very smart in winning for Nick, defeating Timon Lane and Carter Axelrod. And then All About Coral for Darren Rowe was able to defeat Pepper Grinder and Girls Like You in the second of those heats. The market is up with Tab Touch as well for the distance potential final on Saturday. Molfetta Cruz comes up with box number 1, currently at $2.90. Blessed Doll, $51. All About Coal is at $3.20. And then Carter Axelrod, $3.50 in box number 4. We then see Yamasaki Bale in box 6, $34. Girls Like You, $10, and Timon Lane, $10. So All About Coal, $3.20 favourite, drawn in box 3. Carter Axelrod, box 4, $3.50, and Molfetta Cruz, the favourite, box 1, $2.90, and you would think would strip fitter for that run as well. We're about to be joined by David Short. He can talk about the distance potential final on Saturday night and also the shorts on Friday night. We're getting him on to continue our look at the 50 years of greyhound racing. We'll be talking with Shorty in a few moments' time about the greyhounds from the 20s, the 2000s onwards, and an era that him and I have been closely involved with. And we'll get Shorty on in just a moment. Just before we do, I just wanted to mention, because I received an email over the weekend, and this is important for trainers and also all owners, that please note that the current owners' licences are due to expire on the 31st of July, and any greyhounds with unlicensed owners will be unable to compete past this date. So all owners are reminded, and all trainers need to get in contact with their owners, because some of them are a little bit lapsed, and some of the owners have not renewed their ownership or licences. It's free. There's no cost involved, but you need to renew your licences before Monday the 29th of July. Otherwise, trainers are going to have difficulties in being able to get their greyhounds registered. So that is very important for all trainers to check that their owners are licensed, and for all owners to make sure that they have renewed their licences. David Short's about to join us. Good morning, Shorty. How was your weekend?
Yeah, really well, thank you, Pete. Good morning to yourself. Everyone tuned into TAB Radio. Lovely to be with you on this beautiful Monday morning.
What did you make? I just went through the market for the distance potential on Saturday night. Molfetta Cruz was a smart winner, and I thought would strip fitter with the second look at the track next week in the final.
Absolutely, yeah. Any question marks that potentially were there first look, certainly taken care of now. It was a really nice effort. And you'd think there'd be a bit of improvement off what we saw with the Greyhound there. So, yeah, there's definitely scope there heading forward. A nice dog that has run some tremendous races against some of our best sprinters, and now up to a journey. Looks really well placed over the next little patch.
And quite a few upsets in the heats of the shorts. The favourites currently the second reserve, Sunset Hornet at 225. What a Ripper's drawn out in box 8. Currently heads the market now for those in the field at 360.
Yeah, look, it's another really interesting race. We saw some good heats here on Friday night. It's always one of my favourite races, the shorts. You get to see a few dogs that have been going around over the longer trips, stepping back, and some of our standard short courses there. I tell you something, though, you certainly earn your money if you find the winner of this particular final. I think the market's a good reflection, $3.60 the field. Probably have to have a bit of a closer look, Pete. A little way out, we'll hear more, I'm sure, on chasing winners on Friday when we look at this particular race in a little more detail there. But certainly out of the heats, there were some really nice performances. What a Ripper from box number 8. Never easy to get across a field with this much early pace in it. It's going to be a bit of a challenge. So it may well be the door ajar for there to be a nice each-way play with something potentially drawn underneath it that can hold it out.
I've been lucky enough over recent weeks to talk with Mark Botcher, David Simonetti, Craig Evans, and we started with yourself as well on some of your favourite greyhounds that you've seen, and they've gone through the early years. So from 1975 or 1974 when we started racing, and Bright Idea, and we spoke about some of the champs like Mr. Towhide and Fremantle Echo, Sandy's My Mum, Jamali Park and Reggie Might, Paradise Street, the list goes on. I want to go back to the 2000s with you, Shorty. This is a race in 2002. It's the first time a greyhound from WA was able to win the Top Gun.
And Lindo Blue has taken the lead in the Top Gun. Thunder Creek the outside on excitability. 5 lengths El Grundo. Well back Modern Assassin, followed by Walk Alone, Silver Soul, Big Sam Banner into the straight, and it's all Lindo Blue. Lindo Blue for Western Australia wins the Top Gun in brilliant fashion.
There was big celebrations, wasn't there, back in 2002, Shorty, when Lindo Blue won for Lindsay Archer and the Wizard Colin Bainbridge.
Yeah, this is a really special win, Pete. Brings back some great memories. I can't believe it was 22 years ago now, but the dog went across there with some good credentials, but taking on a high-quality lineup like that, it was a big win. It was a crowning moment for Colin Bainbridge in the sport. Cole, of course, a guy that's never had a massive team of dogs and has always been very clever with his greyhounds, but for him to have a chaser of that calibre was really special. And, of course, Lindsay Archer and Dale, they were great for our sport for so many years, and it was an incredible moment for Lindsay. I know it was right up there with the biggest thrills that he had within his time in the sport. To get across to the East Coast and win such a big Group 1 was a race I'll always remember, and went on to do some stud duties as well. But that's a night that many West Aussies managed to get a little something on. Lindale Blue at a big price for memory that night as well. So, yeah, that brings back some great memories, and I'm sure if Cole's tuned in this morning, he'll have a great big smile on his face, because they're the wins that certainly you do never forget, and which really crown you in the sport as a trainer, and you know, Group 1 glory in a race like that really put him on the map.
We spoke about him in our discussions in coming up with the top 8 sprinters and top 8 stayers, Shorty. And another greyhound that we discussed as well was Token Royale, who was a back-to-back winner, and not too many greyhounds have done this, a back-to-back winner of the Greyhound of the Year. He's trained by the great man Johnny Iwanick, who won 3 Greyhound of the Years in a row, with Foolish Girl winning in 2005. Token Royale won 03-04. He was a wonderful chaser.
He certainly was. What he was, Pete, was just one of the most reliable and consistent local dogs we'd had for such a long period of time. It was almost 2 straight years of domination from Token Royale on the local scene. He just was such a durable dog. He kept on turning up week in, week out. He won a bunch of our big feature races. He won a pile of free-to-alls. He was just one of those dogs that was such a hard chaser as well. He really did put together a phenomenal record, and was a real punter's sort of favourite, because often went around at a time where, you know, there probably weren't any other real genuine sort of top-line stars around. Token Royale quickly became that dog that was sort of the multi-anchor most Saturday nights at Cannington, and was just a very, very reliable dog. So brings back some good memories as well, Token Royale. And it's a time that Johnny Owenick really would look back on fondly. 3 straight Greyhound of the Year titles, I think, probably speaks volumes of the job that he was doing at that time as a trainer. He was, I guess, been out of the sport for a little while now, but every time I hear John Owenick's name, I think of a trainer who backed up his dogs in tip-top order. He had a pile of dogs that went on to have, 100-plus starts. They were always in really good nick. He kept his dogs happy and healthy, and he had a tremendous record through that particular period in the 2000s, and Token Royale was certainly the pin-up boy of the kennel.
And a couple of years later, he won the Greyhound of the Year with a very good dog by the name of Back Tonight, who ran second in a Perth Cup and fourth in a national sprint. And either side of that, in 2006 and 2008, 2 greyhounds that we discussed in the staying ranks for the top 8, Ronray Dancer and Electra.
The mighty canines in their own right. Barry McPherson with Ronray Dancer was such a outstanding stayer, and got the job done in a couple of features, and also Electra. We talked about her when going back as some of my favourite wins on the Cannington circuit. She got so far back in that Galaxy final, and love the call from your good self, but just love what she did for the sport at the time. Keith Harding, an incredible trainer, and as we touched on, she arrived in WA pretty much on her last chance. She had really, I guess, what's a kind way of saying it? She probably wasn't putting in like she had done earlier on in her career in a few of her starts before she arrived here in WA. But Keith, as he did with so many dogs, he just found the key to getting them chasing well again, and she really did produce some phenomenal runs. They're the dogs that capture the imagination of a lot of people that haven't necessarily been into the sport, but you only need to see a few runs from greyhounds like Electra, and it has you wanting to tune in again the week after, as she was sensational in a pile of our staying races for that 12-month period, Pete. And I know you really enjoyed calling her. It was never easy because you never knew whether she was going to make up the great big head starts that she was often giving top-line stayers, but more often than not, she found a way to get herself into the finish.
She certainly did. Max Julian had a wonderful chaser during the late 2000s, and that was Miss Slick. She dominated in 2008 and won the All-Stars and the Oaks, and then the following year won the Perth Cup. And vocal enforcer for the Nodens and also Andrew McLaren, he dominated in 2011. But there was a young trainer that came along in the late, sort of mid-2000s, late 2000s, and that was a young guy by the name of Paul Stewart. He came through the ranks, and he had a couple of really smart chases that I'll get you to talk about. One was Pedrosa in 2010, and the other one was a little bitch in 2012. We knew her as Miata.
Miata, she strides up, she hits the front. Go WA Star, you go. Miata races off the back by 5. Zipping Lad can't keep up. Then followed by Shimaguni. She's the pin-up girl of WA Greyhound Racing. She gets a raw 41.30, new race record. Wins by 10 lengths, Shimaguni. Third goes to Freeway.
Yeah, I remember the connections of Shimaguni came across, and Miata had broken track records at the time. Shorty over the 500, she'd stepped up and broken track records over the 600, and they said, well, she's going to come up against a really smart bitch now in Shimaguni. Well, Miata put her to the sword, didn't she, in that first Galaxy, and she came back and won another one the following year. Pedrosa, first of all, was a star for Paul Stewart, and then he had that lovely bitch Miata.
Absolutely, yeah. Pedrosa, I guess, was the dog initially that sort of got Paul up and running, and was a chance for him to work it through the sort of lower grades and get it up to free-to-all ranks, and then the dog emerged as a genuine top liner. And he also had Dinah Nayland, of course, that raced really well at the top level there for a while. But really, it's all about Miata, and she was the darling of the track from the moment that she arrived at the trials. The whispers were coming through pretty quickly to the racing office, which is where I was working at the time, that there was a pretty special canine that had arrived on the scene. She was smashing records over all distances in trials in the build-up to her race career. And then it came time for her debut on I think it was a Wednesday night. It may well have been out at Cannington. I remember being there trackside, and it was much publicised, the debut of this bitch, and she came out and lit the place up. And that was the start of just a phenomenal career. 51 starts, 42 wins, 6 placings, more than $715,000 in prize money. She won group race after group race. It was all at the top level, and really the only time she was ever beaten was pure bad luck that stopped her. She made her own luck. She could do it from up front. She could do it from back in the pack if she had to. She was just the most special greyhound, and she really did dominate the distance racing nationwide. There's a lot of chat in regards to a photo that still sits really well with Paul, and I'm sure many people from the industry that love Miata, like so many of us did. Black Caviar with Miata, and was back page of all the big papers at the time, and it was. I mean, when you consider how big Black Caviar was in worldwide thoroughbred racing at the time, Miata was really quite well known. She broke through to the mainstream when it came to being on sports news headlines and in papers and the like. She was an absolute superstar, and I still, to this day, will never forget that second Galaxy win, Pete. I've never seen anything like it, and never will again. It was a special time in the sport. She had such a big following, and there was such a massive crowd there to see her second Galaxy win. And with a lap to go, it's almost like when Don Bradman retired and had the standing ovation. With a lap to go in that second Galaxy final, everyone in the old Cannington grandstand just got up on their feet and were just clapping for almost the entire last lap. Now, there's very few times in greyhound racing that you can be confident enough to go up with a lap to go, but such was the confidence of all of the punters and the love for her that everyone just got up, and it was almost a lap full of clapping, and then the great big cheer as she arrived for her second Galaxy. It was a phenomenal career, and that's a moment right there that will always stick with me, and still to this day it makes the hair on the back of the neck stand up remembering it.
And she had a great following around Australia. Had her last start at Sandown in a Sandown Cup heat, which I flew across for, and every person that went on course, and there was a massive crowd at Sandown that night. By being on course, they got a share in her first ever pup. So it was a great promotion by Sandown, and a great way to send out the great Miata. You mentioned Diana Nolan, who won the Perth Cup the following year, along with the Galaxy to Miata. And in the last few years, before we closed down the old Cannington, which we miss deeply, Shorty, Star Recall, Terode, Ramifications were all very, very good greyhounds. But we then went across to the new track in 2016, and a young guy by the name of Robbie Brangstone and a trainer, Enzo Credelli, they combined to win a Perth Cup and go on to win a Greyhound of the Year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great crowning moment in the sport for Robbie Brankston and for the Credellis. They'd been involved for such a long period of time, and I think back to when I sort of had first got involved in the sport, and it was a real family affair. They all sort of were getting behind each other, and they had some reasonable dogs without having sort of genuine top liners, but for them to get the cash with equanimity back in 2017 was... I think it really was the moment that made people realise that the Credellis had very much arrived in the sport as legitimate sort of top 5, top 10 trainers in the sport, and they've maintained that excellence since, to be honest, Pete. They really have done a super job. But to Robbie and also to the Credellis, this was the moment that they dreamed of. Anybody that gets involved in the sport, you always have a pretty high price on your local hometown cup, and to take it out was a night that they'll remember forever. I remember seeing Robbie at Crown post-victory, and he was walking around with a cup and having a drink out of it, and they are moments that I'm sure stick with him for the rest of his life. But that was a night off the inside draw. Another reminder too, box 1 in these big finals, Pete, is a very, very nice draw to have.
Certainly is. A young lass came across in the early 2000s, late 1990s to WA from Victoria. Her father was a Hall of Famer, Alan Britton. Her name was Linda Britton. And with her partner, Chris Holst, they dominated for many, many years. Linda herself, in her own name, won 16 training premierships, and Chris has followed on from that. They probably had one of their biggest moments in the sport, though, in Melbourne in the 2018 National Sprint Championship with a greyhound by the name of West on Augie.
West on Augie took over. He's a length in front, but Big Flood's winding up. Haston slowly sticking on the inside. West on Augie leads for home. Haston slowly drives on the inside. West on Augie for Western Australia won it. He beat Haston slowly. Third either Carnley Kenny or...
He was a very good dog, wasn't he, West on Augie? And it was a great moment for the Holson Britain kennel back in their home state of Victoria for Linda.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a very good dog, West on Augie. Unfortunately, a few sort of injury issues probably curtailed us from seeing the very best of the dog deeper into his career. But any time you can travel with greyhounds and get the job done away from home in big Group 1s, it's a credit to the trainers and also the dogs themselves. And West on Augie had about a 10-month patch there where he was just absolutely airborne.
The following year, we all celebrated here in Western Australia one of the best ever nationals put on, I reckon, by the great man David Simonetti. I would have loved to have seen what the budget was. There was even a carousel in the auditorium on the night, Shorty. But it was a big night on the track at Cannington because Western Australia won not only the national sprint with premium share, but they also won the national distance championship with Reedy's runner. That was a big night.
It certainly was. It was a night that made the industry so very proud. I think it's one thing to be a good host, but it's always very nice if you can have a bit of icing on the cake with your greyhounds performing well. And I think we expected both of our runners to perform well, but to have them both come out and cash in on the home track advantage and take out the double was magnificent. And it probably ranks up there with the top three nights I've had personally out at the New Cannington circuit. You made a really good point, Pete. We're celebrating the 50 years of greyhound racing, and we do have the new circuit there now, but gee, when we go back and start talking about some of these performances of greyhounds in the early 2000s and Miata and the like, it takes you straight back to our old venue there at Cannington. And it was special. I'm sure there's plenty of people like us that had many a night out there in the old restaurant, and it used to, my goodness, didn't they pack them in there? We used to get 600 and 700 people in those three tiers right through to the club lounge back in the day. And I worked many a Wednesday and Saturday night running punters clubs. We'd often have 500-600 shares, people just absolutely spilling out of the place, great interest. And it was a time where the sport was absolutely thriving, and the track itself was very unique. You needed to almost have a 570 to 600 metre dog to be confident about them winning over the sprint trip at Cannington. It was a track that certainly suited those strong run-on style of dogs.
2019-20, Shorty was around the time that a young lass by the name of Leah Erner started on Greyhound Gossip, and we got her involved, and she got involved with Greyhounds WA, did a lot of their photo shoots and so forth, and the crowds at Cannington started to grow. Now, I'm not sure whether it was because of Leah being out there or whether it was because of there was a greyhound that was racing at the time of the name of Tommy Shelby.
Tommy Shelby, the leader. Wow to the outside. Tommy Shelby. Wow. Stride for stride. Tommy Shelby. He's in rarefied air. He's won the egg. Tommy Shelby first. Wow second.
Yes, so that was a big field, and Tommy Shelby won the Golden Easter Egg in 2021, and he brought a lot of new people back to the track, didn't he? The young boys and girls that would get up dressed up in their Tommy Shelby outfits, and he had a following all around Australia and the world.
Oh, big time. And he's doing an amazing job at stud as well. He was a special, special dog. I think he's been really good for the sport, Pete. It can't be underestimated how much interest he created throughout the course of his career. And the other thing I loved about him was there's a lot of dogs, as time has evolved in Australian chasing, that are very one-dimensional, even at the top level. They need to lead to win. And Tommy just isn't that. He was never that dog. He never had excuses in his runs. Even if he was getting clipped and forced wide at different tracks, he still always found a way to put himself into the contest. And he travelled all over Australia. Everyone got to see him at different stages. He won most of the big Group 1s Australia-wide throughout the course of his career, more than $1 million in 48 starts, 31 wins, 12 placings. He just never ran a bad race. He was so special for the sport. And of course I raced his full brother in Jumbo Jet, who was a nice dog in his own right. He was very much in the shadow of Tommy Shelby, but they arrived at the same time, so I got to meet Tommy when he came over at the start of his career, and he's just the most beautiful, handsome blue dog you'll ever see. And his racetrack career was phenomenal. He's now going on with a job as a stud dog. He's just been the perfect greyhound.
He certainly has. And just quickly, Vice Grip, of course, was a very, very talented chaser that won Group 1s not only here but on the East Coast as well. Elite Machine did the same. We had greyhounds like Electrified. The last few years we've had some outstanding chasers, and Sage Tennille is another one who went on to win a national sprint championship. Looking forward to the Nationals just around the corner, Shorty.
Yeah, absolutely, Pete. And I guess worth noting just quickly too, of those dogs you just touched on, Elite Machine, to be able to win the Perth Cup for Jamie Marsh, it was a great moment for him, with everyone up on the balcony cheering him home with Elite Machine in that Perth Cup, and went up to Queensland and took out one of their big features up there. And then, Ad Smithson, to have a dog like Vice Grip, he's touched on it in a few interviews I've had with him, really has helped to set him up for life. And he was just an incredible dog for 18 months. He took out all of our big feature races, didn't matter where he drew. He was a dog that just put himself into all of his races, such a hard chaser. And again, to set up a young guy that's now becoming one of the elite trainers in Adam Smithson. So good to see that next generation of trainer within families as well, Pete. And Ad Smithson is certainly one of those, with, of course, Ray and Linda being involved in the sport for a long time, and great people in the sport as well.
Looking forward to what is going to be another 4 weeks of before the Nationals. Shorty, looking forward to that. And I appreciate you coming on and just sharing a few of your memories of some of the great dogs we have when we look back. And it's been great experience going back and looking at the top the top 8 greyhounds of the sprinters and stayers, but reminiscing over some of the great dogs that we've seen over the 50 years.
Big time, Pete, and I thank you for being involved in the process, because it's brought me great joy running my memory back over some of the all-time champs over that period of time. And I really, everybody tuned in today, I urge everyone to come along to the big event when it does come around again. I know at the Greyhound of the Year award this year, Pete, we saw a lot of old faces from generations gone by, the likes of Eileen Langston and Dot Horton, Mike Bate in the crowd. If you're a greyhound person, you really are a greyhound person for life, and we don't really get the opportunity to catch up with these wonderful stars of our sport from years gone by all that often. And if you're friends with them and you're tuned in today, when the big events do come up to catch up later in the year, please urge them to come along and get involved, and make sure if you're there on the night, go and say good day and catch up with them, because they are the people that have made the sport what it is today.
Good on you, Shorty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again soon. And don't forget, punters, started last Friday, but we've got a new podcast every Friday afternoon, Shorty. You can tell us about this, the name of it, and also who's going to be on your show. It's well worth listening to not only get the winners for the Friday and Saturday programs here locally, but also on the East Coast.
Absolutely, Pete. Yeah, so we kicked off last Friday. It is called the Tab Touch Greyhound Jet Set Podcast. It's myself and the Shane Train Williams. We have Jace Campbell and also Corey Smith joining us to go through the Wentworth Park and also the Meadows card. Kennel Mail from Graham and Damien Credelli, Lukey Townsend and the Shane Train. We go through very best for the weekend, best novelty plays, quaddie plays, all of that, plus a VIP industry interview with 10 questions from the train that put them under the grill. A great opportunity to get to know our local industry stars in a really light-hearted way, and it's something we'll look forward to putting together each and every Friday afternoon heading forward for the rest of this year.
Good on you, mate. Have a good week.
Cheers, Pete.
David Short there joining us on Greyhound Gossip. Great to have the great man who's been involved with Greyhound Gossip all the way back to, I reckon when we started in 1996, 1997. We'll take a break.